Welcome to Behind the Bar for Monday, June 16th. Lots happening in court. The biggest event that happened today in court is that for the first time, jurors got to actually witness videos from the freak-offs. They witnessed it in open court. They had headphones on so that the people in the gallery, the assembled media, could not see the video or hear the video, but it clearly had an impact on the jury.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, people have been waiting for this moment. We've heard a lot of testimony about what these freak-offs looked like, but, a picture paints 1,000 words, right? A picture's worth 1,000 words, and the jury has finally seen some moving footage. They've seen still images, they've heard audio recordings, and they've heard those witness testimony, but they were putting on headphones. This was out of view of the gallery, and it wasn't at counsel's table because those screens at counsel's table can be seen by the gallery.
Clearly, what happens is they would have gone into the back. So it was 2 minutes worth of video that they saw.
2 minutes worth of footage from 3 different dates: October 2012, October 2014, and December 2014. About, in the aggregate, 2 minutes of footage.
And so what would have happened was they would have had a sort of negotiation where the defense would have tried to say that we should see less of this video. The prosecution would have wanted more. They would have found few incidents that were exemplars of the overall sort of videos of the freak-off videos that they had, and they would have agreed to show the jury exactly this 2 minutes. This would have been discussed. The court reporter would have been there for this in case it goes up on appeal, but nevertheless, the press was not alerted to it. Nobody else knows about these back room negotiations. Instead, it would have come to a head. They would have released this 2 minutes, but just to the members of the jury.
That's right. So all the jurors, the judge, the witnesses, and all the involved parties who are allowed to see these videos put on these headphones, and they were shown. And the gallery was still present while this was happening in court. So people have reported on the reactions of the jurors in particular while they were watching this. Some were neutral or stone-faced, but one female juror was reported to have covered her eyes with her hand, a reaction that she had sort of displayed maybe earlier during some testimony, because what she was witnessing was not to her liking, sort of shocked in some way.
I'm surprised, frankly, only one of the 12 was witnessed to have covered her eyes during this.
Another juror, they said, winced.
Yeah, another winced, right. From everything that we've heard, the descriptions of these and the little bit of video that's leaked out, it's some pretty graphic stuff. And the fact that jurors are now being subjected to this. During voir dire at the beginning of the trial, they were asked whether or not they would be willing to sit through this kind of thing. They got this far because they said that they could look at it maturely.
Yeah, you're right. Defense counsel was saying, look, this case is going to have lots of allegations. This was during voir dire. Are you going to be able to handle sort of graphic images of this type? To your point, the defense is probably saying, look, these videos don't show violence. The Cassie video of the hotel beating is one thing. That's highly sort of probative as to whether he was forcing her into the freak-offs. When you're just showing sex videos, I would imagine the argument's pretty strong on the defense side to say, well, this doesn't show anything non-consensual. This shows a freak-off, but how is this helpful and not just inflammatory to Diddy?
Yeah, I think I hear the point. I think at some point you got to allow the jury to actually know what it is they've been told about all this time. Because, you can imagine that all of them have very different images of what's going on in these videos in their minds, no matter how much description has been given by Cassie and Jane and others. They still want to know what they look like, and just the fact that Diddy was actually recording them. It seems that he was not doing it quietly. Everybody knew they were being recorded.
Yeah,
but nevertheless, the fact he was recording them and the graphic nature of the videos. I think the jury has a right to see that.
I think you're right. The other point I would say, if defense was pushing back on this, was part of the allegations are that he recorded these as a means of embarrassing the participants and threatening them to be released. So you want the jury to see what was so embarrassing.
Oh, good point.
They have earned the right to maybe see how this could pressure an individual, and seeing with their own eyes what the nature of the freak-offs look like could bolster the credibility of Cassie's testimony that she really didn't want these things out, and that's why she continued to participate in them. A very interesting day. I don't think any of these will leak. It's serious, a serious matter, and I think the jurors will take this quite seriously.
There was one thing I wanted to hit on. You just touched. I saw it in our notes before we came on. I can't remember exactly what was said, but talking about these videos being used to extort these women, to basically keep them in Diddy's fold, not let them leave, else they would be released to loved ones of the women. Jane testified to that as well. Or there's some text messages between Jane and Diddy. Was it Christina? I thought it was Diddy, but Christina Quorum was able to look at these.
That might be right.
Anyway,
That might be right.
but
Yes.
Jane came forward. This woman Jane, we heard about all last week, and she testified, or she had written text messages saying basically, no, you're right. It was to Christine Quorum. She's saying Diddy is threatening me. That's
Yep.
right. She said Diddy is threatening me that if I don't do his bidding, he's going to leak this publicly. So we're sort of confirming what it is that Cassie had testified Diddy was doing.
That's right. And this is a good time to bring up how all of these text messages were introduced today. There was something called a summary witness. And what that means is the volume of documents that were produced in this case are extensive. And during witness testimony, you are often getting the person who sent the text message to authenticate this text exchange. And they did a lot of that during the witness testimony, but they didn't do all of it. And they still have exhibits that they want the jury to go back and deliberate upon. So you bring in a summary witness who's someone who just summarizes a big set of data and is authorized to explain what these text messages say. They're not a party to the case. It's usually a paralegal or someone like that, but they've examined the full sort of extent of the record, and they're allowed to present those to the jury. Now, they're not an expert witness. They don't offer any opinions about what the documents mean. They don't tell you about their feelings. This is not as if Jane was saying how she felt while she sent a text message. They simply are there to offer a back and forth and say, this is a text message that was produced during discovery. Here it is.
It's the exact same thing as the prosecution did when they submitted the videos to the juror, right? This is a summary and examples of what the larger body of evidence showed. Again, it's negotiated in the back with the defense wanting a certain type of summary testimony to come in, the prosecution insisting on other, the judge brokering that negotiation. So the jury is now given a 2 minutes worth of videos of the free costs, as well as testimony from a paralegal within the prosecutor's office testifying to the summary of the text messages and the email.
That's right. And this stuff can be less dramatic, obviously. It's just to make sure the jury has more materials when they go back and deliberate, but it's essential, right? Because the testimony of Cassie was now 3 weeks ago. So some of that is going to fade from memory. You want to make sure that they go back with hard evidence in their hands to pour over, to sort of reacclimate themselves and reacquaint themselves with the evidence. And so summary witnesses in cases that are large and complex are very, very important.
One last point about the summary witness before we get on to talking about the juror that the prosecutors got dismissed. This looks like the case might be coming to an end, right? These summary witnesses are typically offered at the end of the prosecution's case in chief.
That's a great point. They're sort of cleanup witnesses because they've gotten a lot through Cassie, through Jane, through Christina Quorum's direct testimony. And then this is just to make sure, did we forget anything? Let's throw it in through the summary witness. It's an indication that the prosecution's case in chief is coming to a close. They're going to call their final witnesses. I believe there's some special agents and some government employees that are going to still testify to just get more evidence into the record. But then they're going to turn it over to the defense, and they're going to have their case in chief, and we're going to see the tide swing entirely in the other direction before this case, they hope, will be submitted to the jury before July 1st.
All right. So just to finish up on the one issue that we started talking about last week, this is this juror that the prosecutors wanted to get removed from the case. They alleged this person had not been entirely truthful with their with where they lived. They had said they lived in New York. Maybe they live in New Jersey. Maybe they moved during the pendency of the hearing. Of the trial. So the judge, now the defense on, I believe it was Friday, wrote a letter to the court saying, look, what prosecutors are trying to get rid of this person simply because they are an African-American male and they don't think he's good for the case, for their side of the case. They're using it as a pretext for why they want to get rid of this person. It's actually on racial grounds, which is not allowed. So Judge, we don't want you to dismiss this person from the jury pool. The prosecutors won the day. The judge actually did dismiss.
That's right. And to the defense's credit, Judge Subramanian, who was already leaning towards, let's get this juror out. If there's questions as to the residency requirement, which is a black and white rule, you have to live in New York in order to serve on this jury. It planted enough of a seed that he said, I'll take it under submission, and I want to review this during the weekend. He came back and said, this juror's got to go. There are questions about how candid they were about their residency. That is a firm requirement. I'm not going to sort of look into whether this was pretextual in favor of the prosecution by getting rid of a black juror. I'm going to bring up an alternate, and I'm not going to do that with any sort of view into the racial dynamics at play here. And I think that's the exact right call.
100% the right call. Remember, this jury was prior to the dismissal 4 white jurors and 7 jurors of color. We didn't get the breakdown. This is just from people who are talking in the people who are in court and reporting this back to the press. And then this person who was dismissed was, I guess, of Hispanic.
He was a 41-year-old black Hispanic man who was apparently a fan of hip hop. He worked for the Department of Corrections. There was some indication from his demographic makeup that the defense thought this guy's going to be in our favor,
Right.
and you're just trying to get someone who we picked for the jury out of this case.
But by the way, there's nothing wrong with that. But now I take that back. If it's because it's racially motivated, that there might be something wrong with that. But really, if it's based on the fact that they don't think because he's a hip hop fan, it's one of the things we learned about this person, that they think he might be more pro Diddy, it's okay for the prosecution to get rid of them. Just like, by the way, the defense would seek to get rid of somebody who they felt during the course of the trial had suggested that maybe they were in favor of the prosecution. They would use any.
And they had race-neutral grounds to do so. This
Yeah.
was about whether he honestly was reporting his residency. Now, I thought about this, and I think the judge did an excellent job. If the judge starts, by the way, the alternate who came up is just the first in line. They're not looking, they
Right.
have 6 alternates. There's someone who is alternate number 1. When a juror is excused, that alternate goes in. He's not
I want to
selecting
interrupt you
amongst the
for a
6.
second. CMT 2013 says, isn't it a coincidence that the accountant juror was added on the day that all the accounting transactions came into evidence? So this is because the person who replaced juror number 6 happened to be a accounting
57-year-old man from Westchester.
Right, who happened to be an
Yes.
accounting professional. No, the judge did not make any determination except that you are alternate juror number 1.
That's it.
And you step up. And that person was assigned at the beginning of the trial without respect to his profession. He just says simply that's the order in which they were selected, and he was alternate juror.
Yeah, now
number
people
1.
might have thought you have 6 alternate jurors. Why not try to match as close as you can the 41-year-old black Hispanic with whoever is most similar to him? That's disastrous.
Yes.
The judge doesn't want to be in the business
Can you imagine?
of trying to match the alternate
Can
to
you
the guy
imagine?
who's dismissed.
You're Hispanic but not black, but you're black and not Hispanic. You just don't do that. You create them in
Don't do
you put them in order. And by the way, that order is not predetermined based on any sort of ranking system. That order is just simply in which the random number was every juror. If you ever go to serve on jury duty, you would get a random number. Those are put in order. That person would have been next in line. They would have been put in the seat.
The last point I want to make about this, some people were saying, look, the prosecutors are trying to get this guy off because he's sympathetic to Diddy and just using this residency requirement. The alternative, think about the alternative. If they didn't sort of bring to the judge's attention and they were aware that there were residency concerns, they might be accused of sandbagging this issue and using it to their advantage. And then the defense, you could imagine saying, well, they knew this guy didn't satisfy the residency requirements. He's now convicted my client as guilty, and they knew he wasn't qualified to be on the jury. They would use it to keep him on the jury. So you just want to address these issues as they come up as cleanly as possible. And I thought Judge Subramanian was right to consider the complaint of the defense, but he's done a good job in ruling.
Let's go to a couple questions. Suzanne says, will all aspects of this trial stay sealed after it finishes? There really aren't many aspects of this trial that are currently sealed. We're hearing
Except for the videos. You're not going to see those.
You're not going to see the videos, but and who knows? Things leak all the time, so
Right.
the videos may emerge, but those are not going to be leaked. But we're hearing all the testimony. We've heard everything except the videos. I think I can't think of anything else.
It's been remarkably open, I would
It
say,
has.
except for those videos.
Yeah.
Let's go to is that CMT?
CMT we already did. Enhanced creators.
If he was recording them and they knew, then why are they so surprised that he had them? He's referring to the videos, and the example he says is Cassie on the plane.
He's not surprised. They're not surprised that he has them. They're surprised that he is trying to extort them to basically say, if you try to leave me, or if you, in the case of Cassie, if you continue to say bad things about me, I'm going to out this. You better come back into the fold. According to Cassie's testimony, continue to have freak offs, or I'm going to release this to your family.
That's right. This is not a surreptitious video necessarily, but him using them in this way is the force that they're trying to use.
Otherwise, surreptitiously recording a sex tape is a crime. So he may there may have been charges for that, but no, that's not what he's accused of.
All right, let's go to some comments. Carter says, I've been listening on Apple and I had no idea I could watch on YouTube. Thanks for keeping me updated.
Thanks for watching. Love it.
Welcome. Yeah, watch us anywhere. Dana says, if it's racially motivated, then it's wrong. You can have a diverse jury with race as well as gender and age. He was not forthcoming, and the judge made the correct decision. I agree with Dana. You sound like a lawyer to me.
Yeah. Well done, Dana.
Well said.
You're welcome here anytime.
All right.
All right, guys. See you tomorrow. Thanks.